Yeah. Shh.
I'm not Emily. And my cheerleaders are new.
Let's see.
Are you recording?
Yeah.
Are you going to talk?
So here, I'd grab just a handful of tools. We're going to make a coil pot today. And some of you might remember from last time, we talked a little bit about what coils are. So you're going to get a handful of clay. Now, usually when we're making a coil, we have our recycled clay. So it's clay that's kind of been used in other classes. So you might get pieces, you might get a ball of clay. And what we want is to work the air bubbles out a little bit. So I just kind of hit the clay back and forth in my hand. Then we can start to squeeze it. Actually, I'm going to start with less clay. I'm going to start to squeeze it into a longer cylinder. So I'm starting my coil, squeezing it into a longer cylinder. Not the prettiest thing right now. Now I can start to really make a good coil. So what I'm going to do now is start to roll it out. So I'm trying to keep my hands flat and use mostly just my palm. And I want to do nice long rolls. So most of my rolling is with my palm. Now you will see it go onto my fingers also. And you really have to think about what the clay feels like in your hand. So as I start to roll, I'm using pressure and pushing down. Not too much pressure that it flattens it out, but just enough to keep it getting longer and longer. Now see where it's kind of thicker over here? So now I'm going to make sure I focus on that side. And again, put pressure and roll it out. Now one of the things you might start to notice is that your clay kind of gets thinner. So it's more, it's like thin here and thicker here. And so it's widening out. And we don't really want that to happen. So if you start to get that, go ahead and kind of squeeze it up a little bit more so it's round again. And then you can go back to rolling. Now my clay is still pretty thick right now. So what I'm going to do is actually break it, because it'll give me a little bit easier piece to work with. So again, rolling. When I feel it start to get flat on one side, I give it a little bit of push with my hands, a little squeeze with my hands, and roll again. Now, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm also pushing downward with my palm. And that is what is spreading the clay and making it move outward. So I kind of move from side to side with my clay and work on each part of it. So I don't just stay doing it in the middle, I move from side to side. Now I use my other hand to hold the paper or to hold the mat, the canvas mat, so it doesn't move around too much. You might find some places where your clay starts to crack. Right now that's looking pretty good, but you might find that your clay starts to crack in places. And so if that happens, especially in our next step, because we're going to start to coil our pot, and so if you start getting cracking, a little bit isn't going to hurt it, but what you can do is just get a tiny bit of slip on your finger and smooth that out. That was actually probably a little bit more than I want. Now when you get your coil nice and long, even if it's kind of a short coil, that's okay. But when you get it about the thickness that you want, which my thickness is about my finger. So if it's about your finger thickness, that's a good size. I had some boys and girls making their pots, and some of their coils were like 2 fingers thick, and that's going to be a really fat, heavy pot. So you kind of want to roll it a little bit more till you get about a finger width. See that? So now, once I have my finger width coil, look at that beauty, I'm going to find a tool that is a thin edge because I'm going to use that thin edge. You could also find one like this has a thin edge on it. Oh, let me get some of that clay off of there. This has kind of a thin edge on it. You don't want to use a rounded edge, obviously. Rounded edges aren't going to work very well. You could use one of our butter knives. They work pretty well. Again, another thin edge, so those are going to be great. If you do have a fork, forks work great too because they score a lot of it. So what we're going to do next is make little marks in it. This is called scoring the clay. Alondra, you want to flip the lights on for me? I think that might help. Wait, let's see if... Okay, that's a little better. Can you see that better?
Yeah.
Should we try the lights and see what happens? Yeah. You want to see if the lights help it? So you can see I'm just making little marks. I'm not cutting in so deep, just roughing up the edge. And I like to make the marks kind of crisscross, so some going this direction and then some going the other direction. And it's basically just roughing up the side. Now I had some boys and girls that when they were scoring it, they kind of cut too deep, and then you're going to weaken your coils. So just score it, just rough it up. After you do that, we want to rough it up all the way down the side. I'm kind of rushing this, so you take your time and do a little bit better. But we want to rough that all the way down. Yeah. So we're going to rough that up all the way down. And now I'm going to go along it and just dab a little bit of slip on there. Now, Mrs. Stodchill uses just a little bit of water, and sometimes art teachers do that. But which a little bit of water will work because it will turn the rough edges, it'll turn that into kind of clay and water mix, and so it'll kind of make a slip on its own. But we're going to put the slip on there. Remember we talked about slip last time. It's a liquid clay, so it's a little clay and water mixed together. It's what? That's what it kind of feels like, but it's the water, yeah, just softens the clay up. So now, here's the part that can kind of get frustrating. So I'm going to start by coiling this. So I'm kind of squeezing it in and starting to roll it. Now, I'm just going to show you. I'm kind of making it into a snail. I want to make sure that rough part is going to attach to the edge. Now, do you see how that's starting to crack a little bit on the outside? That's okay. It's kind of like scoring it on the outside. So I'm just going to put a little bit of slip in that too. And I'm just going to keep going. And as I do this, I'm kind of pressing them together. So I'm making my way around. I've got a little crack, but a little bit of slip in there. A little bit of slip in there and pushing them together is going to be fine. So I'm pushing. I'm using pressure to push those together as I go. Yep. Again, just a little bit of slip. It is like a cinnamon roll. Or like a snail. Yeah. Yep. So I put a little slip on it. I can even use a tool to kind of push them together a little bit, smooth it. And I keep going. So, put a little slip. And I can use a tool to kind of smooth it together. Got another big one? Yeah. But the slip, we want that soft clay, and I smooth them together. So I'm making sure still that my scored edge, my rough edge, is what I'm pressing, and I kind of squeeze it because we don't, yep, I'm kind of squeezing because we don't want holes. All right. Now, see how I've got a little bit of crack there? I'm going to go ahead and smooth that out. Now, this is the base of our pot. This is going to be the bottom. We're going to start doing these coils and make them go up. But for today, this is the part I want you to do. Now, yep. Now, because what we're working on is making a coil pot. We're making coil pottery. So this is one of our hand building methods. Next year we're going to learn to do a different kind, but this is what we're going to start with. Now I have a little bit of clay. I have a little bit of clay that I'm squeezing out. I'm going to make a small coil. That coil is a little bit dry, so I'm just going to put a little bit of slip on it. Again, a smaller piece kind of rolls out quicker. Now, it's about my finger thickness. So when I want to join two pieces together, I'm going to score it a little bit. I'm going to score this one a little bit. Yep. I'm going to put a little slip on there, and I'm going to stick those pieces together. But the slip itself won't do it all on its own. I have to use that pressure, and I have to push them together a little bit.
And make them smooth.
And then I can smooth them out, definitely. Now, I'm going to go ahead. What do I need to do next?
Cut it.
Not cut it. I need to score it. Yeah, so I'm going to rough up this side. The side that's going to join, on there is the one I need to rough up. So I'm going to score that side. I'll come around and help you. So I'm going to score that side. This is just if you want to make it a little bit bigger, okay? So after I score it, I'm going to put a little bit of slip on there. Yep. And then remember, the important part is a little bit of pressure. So pressure, pressure, pressure. You're going to do your own right now. Okay. Now, see how I have a little bit of a crack there? A little bit of slip. And smoothing it together.
Are you going to delete our voices out of this?
I don't know yet. Okay, now there's my base. One more important thing. I want you to find a tool that's pointy. At the end of class, this is how we can clean off our tools. If there's a lot of clay on it, kind of wipe it on the edge. But we want to have our name on here. So I know that your coil is not somebody else's coil. Okay? So actually, that's a good idea. But what we're going to do is, because we want our name to be on there permanently, I'm going to take this pointy tip and just put my name on there. No, because I have so many classes that sometimes they get mixed up. So I have Miss B, and then our class is 3-0. Write it neatly, because one of the problems we have is that boys and girls will put their name on there, but it's hard to tell whose it is, and then they get mixed up. Or someone totally forgets to put their name on, and it's a problem. So write your name on as neatly as you can. I have some wooden tools that are even pointier than this, so if you can use those, that would be great. All right, any questions?
This is going to be fun.
Yes, it is. We're going to put these, when we get this far, we're going to put these into a tub and save them.